My name is John Lobell. I teach architecture at Pratt Institute. This is a lecture from my course on Frank Lloyd Wright given in the spring of 2014. This lecture addresses the Guggenheim Museum and related projects. Frank Lloyd Wright and the Guggenheim Museum and some other projects. The museum was founded by Solomon R. Guggenheim, who had set up a foundation, was an art collector, and was an industrialist, very wealthy industrialist. They committed with Wright in the late 1940s to do the museum. It did not get finished until 1959. Frank Lloyd Wright saw the finished building, but he was not alive at the opening. So he died after all the concrete was poured and just before the building opened. It's interesting that at one point it was planned that the Guggenheim residence, their house, might be in the building. You say, wait a minute, you can't live in a museum if it's getting all this public money. Well, they weren't getting all that public money then. That's all new. And in fact, that model did exist. So if you go to the Morgan Library or the Frick Museum was Frick's residence. And he built it with the intention that when he died, it would become a museum. So it did have this mixed use. So we have a notion of what a museum is today. It wasn't necessarily exactly that way then. And we see 46 to 59, so the project was underway for quite a few years. Now, there are precedents for it in Wright's work. Here we are, 1925, he does a project for the Gordon Strong Automobile Objective and Planetarium. So, right, we have this phrase, automobile objective. What the hell's that? Well, cars were new. You needed someplace to go. So that was called an automobile objective. Today we have plenty of places to go. You don't have to build them. And it's a planetarium. So here's the dome, like the Hayden Planetarium. Here's the projector projecting the stars. And then we have a spiral roadway around, and we come up here and we get a view. So we see Wright's already exploring the spiral ramp as early as 1925. Now here we are, 1947, the Morris Gift Shop in San Francisco. It's on a little side street, so make sure you get a guidebook when you're in San Francisco, and it's one of the things you want to catch. It's a plain, simple little building on the outside, fantastic brick arch. Remember, Wright comes from the tradition of Louis Sullivan. Sullivan was always in competition with Richardson for the best arches. Sullivan admitted that Richardson did better arches. We go through that arch, and we're in a sort of a glass tunnel, come in, and we have a spiral ramp. It's now an art gallery, but originally it was a gift shop. So these are little niches where there would be thingies that you would buy, little glass vases or something on display. And then the ceiling has these lucite, milky white lucite bubbles, and very science fiction-y effect. There's our lucite, milky white bubbles. So here's the museum. Major space, minor space, entrance in between, balcony wrapping around, skylight in the middle. We've seen that before. And here's Wright on the roof. The building's been completed, but not yet open. Died a few months later. Frank Lloyd Wright's archive, all the drawings and papers and documents and models, is huge, and was in storage owned by the Taliesin organization. They had it in storage in Arizona and Wisconsin. And they finally realized they can't take care of it. It's very expensive maintaining an archive. It takes a huge amount of space. You need controlled climate conditions. You have to go in and catalog everything. You have to do restoration on certain things. So they gave it to the Museum of Modern Art. So the Museum of Modern Art now has it. And there's an exhibit at the moment of some of Wright's drawings. And over the years, there'll be more. I think 1916, in the next couple of years, is a huge exhibit of the scheduled at MoMA for the right material. But some of the things we see in this material is that there originally were many more spirals. The thing reduced in size as realities of budget sunk in over time. And it was reversed too. The big spiral was on the north side, it's now on the south side. So there are changes over a period of time. And the dome was very much like what we just saw at Morris Gift Shop. It had a lot of science fiction bubbles. The organization is interesting. When you're there, make a point of observing exactly what's going on. The walkway is narrower on the bottom and gets wider as it goes up. And you might think it would be the opposite, that as it goes up, it's got more weight to carry, and so they'd want to lighten it up. But it's got this intersecting cones that define a change in the width of the balconies or spiral ramp. So here we have what was maybe going to be the residence, then it was the offices, and after the Gwathmey-Siegel renovation a few years ago, this became additional gallery space. Here's the main rotunda, and our entrance is here coming in. So, major space, here we are in the temple, major space, minor space, entrance in between, balcony running around, skylight in the middle, and then these aren't shown hollow here, but there should be hollow air ducts through carrying mechanical, hollows dropping through for toilets and elevators holding services. So, very familiar organization. And here it is. The other thing that's happened with museums is that more people go. My father would describe going to the Museum of Modern Art as being the only person in the building. And that's when it was in a townhouse before they built the Goodwin in stone, which they've been expanding ever since. That's not going to happen today. And half the time, I don't go to the Guggenheim very often because half the time I go there's a line around the block. I say, the hell with that. So we have an extremely educated and tourist population in the world. That line at the Guggenheim is probably, I don't know what, 30% international travelers? Probably. I mean, you walk around MoMA or the Met and just hear people talking in all these languages. More and more people are college educated, have studied art, and go to museums. The idea was you go up the elevator and walk down the ramp. Well, you can get about 4 people in that elevator. So all the exhibits are now organized for you to walk up. There's no way you're going to get the crowds to the top and have them walk down. Now, this is an older photo. You actually drove in here, and if you were lucky on the curator's staff, you got to park in there. Well, not anymore. That's now the shop. That's all filled in. And here, the Gwathmey-Siegel edition has not been put there yet. So here's the Gwathmey-Siegel edition, and the architectural community is very happy with it. It's exactly what Wright would have done. He shows something very similar in some of his renderings. And the idea was to provide a backdrop against which the building would be set off, so that you don't have a backdrop of the jumble of the sides and backs of other buildings. The building has been criticized for not fitting into New York. I do not agree. I think it fits into New York just fine. Fitting into New York would mean upholding the urban responsibility of defining the Fifth Avenue edge of Central Park. And I think it does that fine. It does not make a gaping hole in the border to Central Park. He puts this band up to hold the line visually. These two corners sort of define the corners here, projected out. So I think it does a very good job of holding the line. Now, anybody, there are other opinions. Mine's not what I usually hear, but anybody have feelings one way or the other? Now, the other thing that's criticized for, and I think that one's valid, is it's really hard to put an art exhibit in here. You're looking at art on a tilted wall, the walls tilt back, while you're standing on an angle. So should the painting be vertical to the floor or vertical to gravity? There are exhibits that'll work. And now that they have the additional galleries from the new edition, stuff that works better in squares can be in the new edition, and stuff that will work on the ramp can be here. So I think, they've worked it out, particularly with the new edition, but it sure is not easy. It's poured in place concrete with the formwork on the outside. So you see if you look real close, you can see impressions of the wood making up the form. And then there's grinding and patch filling, and then it's painted. So it's not exposed concrete. There's no way you're going to make exposed concrete in that expanse and have it all perfect. So it's kind of, a little bit iffy in its materials. And it's been recently had a major restoration. They scraped it all down, filled in all the cracks, painted. And maybe they have to do that every 30 or 40 years. The first time I went after the Gwathmey Siegel edition opened, I got very disoriented in there. That had never happened before. I've been going there since it opened. My best friend, his brother, was a curator there, so we were trying to get permission to do a roller skating movie in the museum. No way that was ever going to happen, but we gave it a try. So, I've been there a lot, and I've always been comfortable there. But I came out of the square new galleries back into this space, and it was like, now I know what postmodernism's all about. It was really, it's like suddenly you lose anything to get a grip on. You're totally disoriented. So I got that feeling. To the extent at which we want to say that's good occasionally, and we want to say that that's what Frank Gehry's doing, well, Wright did it in 1959. Here it is. So here's his thoughts about exhibiting. This wall tilts out. He's showing these paintings mounted to the wall, so they're tilting back. And they don't do that. They have posts coming out from the wall so the paintings can be vertical. There's glass running along here. Natural light can come in here, and the museum decided to block that off, and there's artificial light in there. So that was not kept. And Wright is seeing these fins, which, as you say, are structural. We'll describe that in a minute, defining subspaces. So Wright explored a series of ideas. One of them was it would be like a giant coiled automobile spring, so that the top would have to bring forces all the way around to the ground. So the spiral would be structural all the way around. My engineering professor at the University of Pennsylvania used to call something like that taking the load for a walk. When there's a load, you want to get it as directly as possible from where it occurs to the ground. And if you do fancy stuff in your building, the loads are moving all around in the building, which we might want to do, but engineers don't like it. They want to directly bring the load down as directly as they can. Another exploration was that there would be columns, that the outside wall would be structural. There's this band of glass here, but there would be posts here so that this exterior wall would be a cylinder, act as a cylinder, and then inside there would be these posts. Now, that would have been a major compromise, so Wright's happy he didn't have to do that. Finally, here's what they arrived at. These fins, and go all the way down, are structural. They are the columns. Now, interestingly, he makes them wider as they go up. Structurally, you didn't want them to do it the other way, but he's counterintuitive here. So between this fin and the next one, say over here, we span this way. Then this is acting as a beam. Then we cantilever out from there, and then we hang the parapet off the edge here. It makes the parapet extra deep here, going below the slab, and the air is in here. Now this is, I pointed out that he did that in Johnson Wax. Louis Kahn would never do that. So when we're looking at this parapet here, from here to here is parapet. From here to here is the outer wall of the air conditioning ducts. He doesn't tell us, he's telling us it's all one thing, but it's not. And here are the vents for those air conditioning ducts. So here are these fins that are the columns. And you can barely see here, see they get thinner as they go down, which means you just have to stuff more steel in there. And here are the fins. Well, here they are, very thin at the bottom. If we took this section higher up, it'd be thicker. Okay, so that's the Guggenheim. Any questions or thoughts about the Guggenheim? So in this late period of his career, Frank Lloyd Wright enters into what I like to call his flying saucer stage. So this is a club that he did. Here's another one, V.C. Morris House. It's the owner of the Morris Gift Shop, San Francisco, on a cliff. Here is the Huntington Hartford. Huntington Hartford was the heir for the A&P grocery store chain, and this is a club and a residence. None of these got built. He did one very much like this for Arthur Miller and Marilyn Monroe. Looks like this. Also not built. This is a project for downtown Pittsburgh. So here are the two rivers coming together into the third river. Now, this area has been revitalized. Pittsburgh went through a rough period with the decline of the steel industry, just like Detroit has with the decline of the automobile industry, but Pittsburgh managed the transition. Wright's vision, not commissioned, just his own idea, is for a huge redevelopment at the Triangle. And it's this again, parking, circular roadway going around into parking garages, shopping malls, theaters, planetariums, etc. Here's a similar idea for downtown and an opera house in Baghdad. This was actually supposed to happen, and then the Ba'athist Revolution, of which Saddam Hussein was the inheritor, stopped it. But the monarch at the time, who got overthrown, was going to do this. Here's one that did get built, Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church in Wisconsin, looking like a flying saucer that has landed. Wright did not like the Renaissance. He didn't like Michelangelo's St. Peter's. He preferred Hagia Sophia and Byzantine architecture. And here he's floating the dome the way the Byzantines did. So you put these punctures for windows along here, and they allow the light merges and gives the effect that the dome is floating. This is another one that did get built, Marin County Civic Center, just north of San Francisco. It's a series of courtyards and courts and government buildings. Spans over some hills. You drive through. I got to go online and get some new photos here. This should be color aerial photos by now. You might have seen science fiction films shot in here. This shot shows up often. This is the Beth Solomon Synagogue outside of Philadelphia. All this is translucent. Here's the mothership coming in for a landing. Very strong triangulated tent-like concrete structure, which is so organizationally strong that it allows the clutter of this ornamented stuff here and keeps it organized.